Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
What if everything you've been told about healing, consciousness, and reality is only half the story? Boundless Authenticity is more than a podcast. It's a raw, unfiltered journey into the hidden truths that the mainstream avoids. Each episode unlocks powerful insights from radical thinkers, spiritual pioneers, and fearless healers who challenge the status quo and awaken what's been dormant within you. If you've ever felt like there's more beneath the surface, there is, and this is where you'll find it. Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. Today I have the powerful Debbi Dachinger, who is a fearless force in UFOs, shamanism, and next-level spirituality. For 18 years, she's hosted the award-winning Dare to Dream podcast, diving deep into extraterrestrials, channeling, and mystical truths, earning global acclaim. As a certified shamanic energy healer and UFO experiencer, Debbi blends ancient wisdom with cosmic insight. She's the lead singer of Lions of Lyra, performing in 5 languages, and a dynamic keynote speaker at major events like the Conscious Life Expo and Portal to Ascension UK. Featured on Gaia's Beyond Belief, Coast to Coast, and countless media outlets, Debbi is also a best-selling author of transformational books. Her electrifying presentations explore the powerful link between shamans and ETs, guiding others through radical activations and galactic healing. Debbi, how's it going?
Oh, it's great. I've been looking forward to spending this time with you. So thank you for having me on your amazing show.
I've been looking forward to it too. We kind of flubbed it last time with the time. But I think that was more my fault because I had the time zone set wrong. And I always struggle with that. You'll hear me talking about it on the podcast all the time. It's just everywhere. And you'd think I'd know better too, because I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a while. So
I know. And because I'm interviewed so much and because I interview so many people, every time I send out something through email, I always say PT for Pacific time /ET. And then I figure folks can fill in if they're in another country or mountain time or central time. But yeah, I know. You'll start doing it. Once you start doing it, it's very easy.
Yeah, I've been struggling for my whole life. So let's move on to you and how you got started doing this work.
I was always really spiritual, deeply spiritual from the time I was a little kid. I mean, in my family, books were the gift that we got. And my mom would take us to a bookstore. And as a little kid, I would go right to the metaphysical area and I would point tarot, astrology. Like I just was into things that felt like they explain life and were beyond the veil. That was so important to me. And I relished all of that. I was also uber creative as a kid. And so that stayed with me my whole life. I had a big awakening 18 years ago. I started on terrestrial radio in Burbank, California with the Dare to Dream show. And I started watching the guests that I had on the show. And at the time, I always thought that spiritual things were like a hobby, right? There were all these other things I was into. I was a singer and an actress at the time and other things. And I came upon this huge realization while I was listening to a guest on my show, and it was just this epiphany. Wow, spirituality is the most important value I have in my life. It is not a hobby. It's actually who I am, and it's what interests me. And the moment I was able to acknowledge that for myself, it really changed the path that I was on. It made it easier and more clear because I knew what I valued. And so there I was doing that. And while I was in that realm of deep spirituality, I realized also I loved channeling, I loved healing, all of that. But I also did not believe in UFOs. I did not believe in extraterrestrials. I was a huge skeptical eye roller. And then God left, right? So had the last laugh for sure. I left the country. This is almost 7 years ago. I left the country and I was doing plant medicine. I was very into plant medicine because I was called to it, not for any other reason, but I was specifically told that I needed to do that. And I did copious amounts of it. And fortunately, always with exceptional situations and shamans. I was in great situations. And one of these out of country experiences to Costa Rica, it was 4 nights back to back. And the first night, well, I was deep in it and I had had quite a journey already. I was laying on the bed and the energy I call the divine, meaning the goddess, the God, the all that is, came to speak to me and said to me, Debbi, you are a shaman, you are a healer, and you are a priestess. And I was very confounded because I never saw myself as a healer. I loved healing, but I didn't see myself gifted like many people I knew. A shaman, I thought that was quite lofty because I was aware that it took decades to become a shaman, that one never proclaimed they were a shaman. They were part of a lineage. Spirit chose them. Their community chose them. And I felt like I'm this white girl from the USA. I have no context. And the priestess part, okay. The beautiful thing was, even amidst my confusion, which continued for some time, she was very lovingly, gently going to ensure I got the message. So every night, and there were profound things that happened every night because it was all sorts of different medicine, she was the one pattern that showed up amidst other things and said the same thing over and over like a mantra. You are a shaman. You are a healer. You are a priestess. And so I sat with that. She showed me different aspects. She was very gracious. When I was complete with that experience, I came back to the USA and I shared with a friend of mine who does many sessions for people. I said, wow, this crazy thing happened and I don't really know what to do with it. And he said, let's do some sessions and see what comes out. So we did one session and thankfully he was really good at what he did. So he put me under quite quickly. And I experienced myself as a male shaman. It was a beautiful, beautiful lifetime, very connected to the land and the earth and the animals, and a very solo life. And I came to know through our sessions that I had multidimensional lives as a shaman, shamanista. And in the very final session that we had, I saw myself as a Mayan priestess. And I was the leader of her people. My name was Nedra. I was well over 7 feet tall, extremely skinny, too skinny for a human, but quite beautiful in her way, very poised. And my God, powerful. I never met a manifester like that. And I spent many hours with her in this pyramid and just getting to know her and her me. And before I left, I asked her, like, how did she have her gifts? How did she manifest? Was it because she was so deeply connected to source, or I wanted to better understand what she could do? And she shook her head and she raised her finger up to the sky and very gently said telepathically, I'm not from here. I am from another galaxy. And I came out of that session and there I was with an aspect of me who had just pulled back the curtain and said, I'm not from Earth. I actually exist. I may be on Earth right now or something that resembled Earth, certainly in that session, but she came from another galaxy. She was another species, which made this over 7 feet tall, super skinny make so much more sense. And then because I have a lot of discernment, I still am very skeptical about many things, but I felt truth. I knew truth, just like I knew truth when the divine spoke to me. And so I got on a journey. Please let me put down all this judgment and separation I've had with this subject. Let me start to understand the extraterrestrial world. So I went deep into it. And at the same time, I never forgot the divine had called me a shaman over and over. And I started to learn a lot more about it. And I got to a point where I realized you can only learn so much. Now it's time to enroll. And I started to find the greatest shamans worldwide and began doing very exceptional apprenticeships, year-long programs, 6-month programs, etc. I would say 5 altogether. One lived here in my town, which was unreal, a shaman from Peru. We did 8 months of work in the forest. And then a lot of the other stuff was other programs. And I started changing massively. I think my soul recognized who I was and started to reincorporate those aspects of myself from many other lifetimes, this real comfort with this information and this healing modality. And then this galactic information. Also, at the same time, they're both rising. And I'm starting to see parallels between both, that there is some simpatico here, that they're not separate entities, but in fact, the shamans have actually learned from the extraterrestrials from the beginning of time that their prowess, their modalities are often not from this world, that they have had beautiful relations all over the world, shamans in almost every country, and female shamans who are the original shamans as well. And that also they don't come from here. And so when you go really deep into who the indigenous people are, and I understand we are all from some other galactic realm, thus all our different shapes, sizes, colors, etc., and proclivities, but still they more than most other species on Earth, ethnicities, are from other planets like Maya, M-A-I-A, in the Pleiades, etc., and that they were put here to teach us right now. And since the beginning of time, they've been here about the love of Earth, the love of plants, animals, living in reciprocity and respect and harmony, and how to really heal. So I started deep diving into all of that information and getting my mind blown that the downloads I was receiving were fact. And it just started opening massive doors. Here I am now, almost 7 years later. I am living today knowing very well much of my galactic history and why it influences a lot of who I am and what I do right now. And also, I'm a very certified shaman. So although I do private sessions, I do a lot of group work. And right now, like, have a monthly Zoom that I do, and people come from all over the world, and I literally give them a 75, 90-minute shamanic galactic healing. And so I think it's a really important time for this work, for the healing, for us to feel really grounded and to remember who we are and why we're here, etc. So yeah, that's the long and the short. And I'd say kind of in between all that was a lot of UFO experience. And I feel that the benevolent theys, and I think there's many theys, many species aware of me, have been very kind and gentle, very caring, very loving. I have not had, thankfully, an untoward experience. They've been incredibly powerful and very positive.
I like that. Great story. I have heard you speak on Beyond Belief, and I have also watched you on Portal to Ascension. I think it was an online presentation. I was supposed to speak a couple guests after you, actually. And where I'm going with that anyway is that I've always experienced you as very authentic and sincere, genuine. There's no fluff. And the things that you're saying, you deliver them with such conviction. So that's one of the reasons I was delighted when you just randomly emailed me one day. You're like, oh, I have some guests for your show. And I was like, universe. Because awesome. I had actually said to myself, I'm going to have to interview her one day. And there you go. It wasn't very long, less than a year, I think, before that happened. So I have a couple of questions, and maybe it's a bit complex, but I'm sure you can handle it. And that would be, how can you differentiate between a real healer and a fake healer, a real call towards shamanism and plant medicine, and a fake one?
That's such a good question. I like that question. Thank you. So the healer part, we all have a GPS inside. We really do have a very strong feeler, and you have to advocate for yourself. So for me personally, when I'm working with somebody, and I have worked with many somebodies, I'll just pull back the curtain and say, over 18 years, besides people I've gone out to and paid or heard and been interested in, also, I've had incredibly gifted people who have been so kind to say, I want to give you a session. I may be tougher than most people, but I can literally feel if I'm sitting there and somebody is working on me and nothing's happening, I don't feel a thing. Typically in a situation like that, I'll start going in my head because I'm aware nothing's happening and it's uncomfortable. And that happens, by the way, not just healers. I think it happens a lot right now with people who do light language. I think it happens a lot right now with people who are channelers. For me, there's always a category of folks who do all of what I said, healing, channeling, light language, unbelievably powerful. And I know many channelers who can literally answer some of the most complex galactic questions, scientific questions, questions that have confounded me or made me curious. And it's mind-blowing where they can take me. This I love. This other, I don't have as much patience for, because some of these people maybe are exploring light language, but are not quite there yet to actually tap in, speak something that's facilitating energetic change. I can feel energetic change. I had Jamie Price. She's been on my show before. She's a friend. I love her. And the last time she was on my show, she agreed to do a light language exchange, and she went somewhere completely, also unexpected by her, but the Lyrans came through and it was powerful. I didn't know if it was for me or my audience, but damn, I literally went back and listened to it over and over again to saturate myself because it was so profound. Didn't have to understand a word, but I was receiving. So there's that column of those who can channel, those who can light language, and those healers. I have people in my life that I work with because even as a healer today, I can claim that I need healers too. And I work with the best. I also think there's a little gray area where some of us feel something from somebody and same person, some of us don't. And you just have to honor that. Now, as far as the plant medicine, I'm much tougher about that because it's really become an industry. And because I see so much of what's out there and the prices and the people doing it, I personally wouldn't participate. And if somebody came to me and said, hey, look, you've drunk this much over the years, and it's not just been ayahuasca, it's been ayahuasca from many countries, it's been yahe, it's been San Pedro, it's been MDMA, it's been a lot of different strains of mushrooms. I'm sure I'm leaving things out that I've done, a little bit of LSD, but it hasn't been my favorite by any means. But I've done enough, but again, discernment. I think if you want to do it, this is not a party drug, period. It's a beautiful modality for healing. in many of these ceremonies, you go in, and one of the things they ask you to do when you're sober before you've drunk the medicine is to set an intention. I love the intentions. They're always beautiful, but I always think they're kind of funny because the plant is not going to give you what you ask for. The plant is going to give you what you need. And so you have to be widened back to receive it. You just don't know what's coming down the pike. And so in order to be in that incredibly vulnerable position physically, etherically, emotionally, etc., I would always say someone who is a real shaman, somebody who the lineage did choose to do this, and usually they're very price appropriate, and be in a safe environment. Very safe environment. I wouldn't, as a woman, go out of country and think I'm going to drink alone with a man and I don't speak the language. And, so I'd be very cautious of things like that. But outside of that, generally, typically, you're with 10, 20 other people. There's one place that does 80, but they do it very, very, very well in the Maloka. And they have at least 8 shamans and more helpers there. So you are tended to. Also, where is the medicine sourced from, I think is very important. And, to find out especially if you're brand new, maybe people who have done it with this particular shaman and situation. That's very helpful. But that's my stuff. And then again, I think you have to trust the inner barometer that tells you, yeah, this is really good for me. Now, I just want to say, for anybody who's curious about this, I was so against it in the beginning. And, I did a lot when I was younger. I was pretty wild. I was pretty crazy. I completely straightened up my act towards the end of college and after. I got pretty sober and I liked it because I had access to a lot. So when I was first invited to do ayahuasca, I thought this person was bananas. And it was nothing I was going to do. I was very polite, but I was out. And then 3 months later, grandmother ayahuasca, the plant has consciousness, came and said, we want you to sit with us. And I was about as surprised as anybody. I was like, you got to be kidding. What does that mean? And then I said, okay, I'll do it. Fine, I'm in. And the moment I said I'm in, incredible synchronicities, like really otherworldly, crazy stuff started to happen for me to show me that this was indeed my path, that the plant was very excited. I said yes, and was going to help bring me to the right people, the right circumstances. And that's exactly what happened. So I was in, but I'll also say when I did it my first time, I was almost borderline panic attack. Every time I got this big mug of smelly stuff, because the moment between this and well, more like this, I would hold my nose and drink it. It's letting go. It's like the biggest sense of, I will have no control. I don't know where this is going to go. This could be very painful. This could be glorious and full of sacred geometry. And it was all of those things. It was a lot of trauma healing. It was a lot of beautiful sacred geometry being communicated with by planets and wild lifetimes, the divine coming. It was this wild amalgam every night. I still, in the beginning, went through this trepidation before I drank. And because I sometimes on my show interview shamans, I always ask them. And many of the shamans who have drunk thousands of times say the same thing. They still get a little scared before they drink. God bless that they tell the truth like that. But I still went back and did it because when I felt it was the right thing, and it was for many reasons, it was the right thing. It really was the right thing. It was a beautiful experience. I have not drunk in 2 years because I feel complete, but I've always been clear that if that changes and the plant needs to reach out to me, it will. It will let me know. And I won't even fully understand why. It'll just be you need to come sit, and then I'll find the right person and circumstance.
That was beautifully said and well explained. The part about the trepidation caught my attention because it's kind of like the critical faculty, the doorway between the conscious and the subconscious. It doesn't want you to open that doorway at all because it knows something will change. So when you gave the example of the very experienced shamans that still have that, you know, it's a really great example of how the subconscious just wants to continue doing the same stuff. And it doesn't want you to find out the secrets that you have because God forbid you'd heal it, right? It's a crazy thing. But you explained that so well, and I'm glad because I have clients that they're like, oh, I just went to a retreat in Mexico. And I have to be very frank with them. I'm like, okay, but here you are, and you haven't communicated that you've learned anything. I think you might have been robbed. You've been bamboozled because the experience that you think you had wasn't as profound, and you're not in a position to actually do any change work. So please tell me why you think that is, right? So it's a really deep topic to get into, and there really is that darker influence on the planet that is, in a way, maybe I shouldn't use the word weaponized, but perhaps in a way that's what it is, to keep people stuck in a low level of consciousness so that they don't actually evolve. And we see it coming in by maybe the use of big pharma, where they want to suggest psychedelics as a mode for healing, but it's not for everyone. And I feel like what you were saying is so true. It should be a genuine calling. It shouldn't necessarily be based on just a snap judgment or because you saw someone talking about it and it made sense to you. It has to be deeper than that. You agree?
It really does. And it doesn't have to make sense either. You may never know. You probably won't know. The plant is not going to sit there and say, I need you for this, this, and this. It's not like you get an agenda. It's just, I want you to come sit with me, or it's time for you to come sit with me. As far as the factor you're bringing up about your clients and what did you get out of it, I agree. That's so important. And I think one piece of that is, again, the who you drink with and the what they serve. It's very important because I've seen a lot of disparity out there. Big difference. And the second piece is who you come to be. There are people I know who talk about, oh, I just couldn't wait to see all the colors and the visions. Well, I mean, that's nice. You could do that in your dreams. But if you're going to see colors and visions, there's got to be something behind it. And sometimes there's something called Rue, R-U-E, or Syrian Rue, which I've done. Holy, that's a whole different level. That's like taking ayahuasca times 100. And in that, I had, the woman didn't tell me because I perform music and I performed music for that ceremony. She did not tell me, which was not cool, that she was adding rue to the ayahuasca. And so when I came on, it was like 1,000,000 miles an hour, pictures, visuals, very intense. And I knew enough to say to my whole body, surrender. There's nothing else you can do in this moment but surrender. This will pass. And just whatever, if this is cleaning out under the hood or I don't know what it's doing, but let that happen. It's not really something I'd like to repeat. And the other thing is about the not knowing. You have to really trust the not knowing. You could hear somebody say, I went and did ayahuasca, greatest thing I ever did. And you could feel something inside of you, percolate that goes, oh, wow. I don't know why, but I feel like I should probably check this out. Just trust that. Or if you get it on your own. But here's a story. 2 years ago, the last time I drank, and I thought I was complete before then, I got a calling out of nowhere. We want you to come drink. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Now, I thought, this was my supposition, my assumption, my ego that said, well, I've been doing all of this shamanic work for all these years. I just know on the other side of things, you want me to come sit with you because you have some profound shamanic downloads for me. I was super excited, right? So I sat down and I'm all ready and I'm ready for the weekend and what it's going to be like and all those downloads. But that's not what happened. That was me. Why the plant wanted me to sit with it is because it was working with me on my mother. And so the whole weekend was about my mom. Cleaning. It was amazing. It was a little difficult and it was a lot, but I was in it, right? Whatever it takes, bring it. I am so grateful for that experience because 1.5 weeks once the ceremony completed later, my mother's health completely changed. She ended up in the hospital. She ended up in ICU. And while she was in ICU, I was so clean with our relationship. There was nothing between us. And I was able to show up. And it's hard for a kid to lose your mom. You could really emotionally lose it, be traumatized. It's a big passing. I was able to show up as a shaman, give her the last death rites, sing over her, rattle over her, get poems and people who sent emails who were her friends and family and read them over her. I did Hebrew prayers over her, everything that would help her go to the Rainbow Bridge, go right into the light, let go of the life she had had here. No, she was complete. I was okay. And I really feel that was the gift the plant gave me. So it called me when I thought I was done. I made an assumption about why I was going to go sit with the plant. The plant had no intentions along those lines, but rather it had something so important to do for me in order to prepare me for this big event of my mom passing. And that is like a reference point in my life. And with plant medicine, I will never forget. And they say once you ingest the plant, once you drink it, it lives in you. Its wisdom is always in you forever. So when the plant says to me, and if it ever does in the future, come, it's time to drink. It may never say it again. But if it does, I know its wisdom lives in me and there will be a reason it's calling me forward to have this experience, and I will trust it.
Profound. No further comments. Along this path, did you have any near-death experiences or past life recall which really shaped the direction that you chose to go in?
No near-death experiences. Lots of past life recalls, lots. There is a very famous Easter Island head. And I really never talk about this, but there's an Easter Island head. Everybody's seen it. And this head started talking to me and telling me that I had been and was in another dimension, its wife. And apparently we had this profound, incredible love relationship, deep relationship. And it would insist throughout a full week that there was a bench right next to it, that I come sit under it. And I had a big experience with this, even that feeling of loving and having loved like that. And yeah, I had to do some research on that when that one was done to better understand it, because that was very interesting, very beautiful. I had a lot of experiences with literally the moon and her speaking with me and saying, "You are my grandchild." And it was kind of emotional and also very, very, very loving. And it's interesting because in this life, my sun's sign is Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. But there were what I love about all of these revelations is that down the road after they happen, is that there are pieces that come together that verify that for one reason or another. And as far as past life, like a lot, but the most interesting things to me today are the galactic ones. And the big influence in my life today is where I think you heard me speak on Portal Ascension. I've done tons of things with them, but I think the one you heard me speak on was the Lyran conference.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is like deep for me, this lion being connection. I was and have been lion beings in many lifetimes. I carry the lion energy. I've got Leo rising in my astrology, and I carry the cat feline energy profoundly, and all the characteristics that the lion beings are, I very much am. And I know they are with me as luminous beings. They are very much a part of my life. And I have from my past lives, I've got beings of light is the best way I can describe them. They're cloaked, but and I don't mean cloak like you can't see them, but they sort of have a cloak, and that might be for me to better perceive them. But really what they are is pure white light. And they're very involved in my life, and they've let themselves be known. And then the lion beings have let themselves be known. And then there is an advanced race in the future called the Yahyel. And the Yahyel are a hybrid race. They are part human and part extraterrestrial genetics. And I've become very friendly with them. And they've also become a big part of my life. They're big cheerleaders for these conversations, for getting this information out. And there are many other species. I almost feels a little bit like a galactic federation of species who are aware of the work I do and really supporting me in it. And the reason is this, not just me, you, Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, Wendy Kennedy, who channels the ninth dimensional Pleiadians, et cetera, et cetera. I can name all these amazing people. All of us who are doing this work, this is called first wave work. First wave meaning we have a platform to share this information so people can learn. People who are interested in this can get involved and go deeper. And then sometimes we speak on stages around the world and we're interviewed. And the more we do this, we're actually helping them, because eventually where we're headed is to become part of the galactic community. So all of my past human lives, but mostly right now galactic. And I call it multidimensional because they're still going on right now, even though it feels like you and I are here right now. But these galactic lifetimes, these galactic beings who are such a beautiful contribution to my life. And, I get to experience a lot. And even in the work I do with the groups, the healing work, they come in a lot to work on the group, to work on individuals. And it's some of the coolest relationships that I have. They're certainly very benevolent and loving and caring.
Okay. Before we wrap this up, can you share perhaps a UFO encounter that really shaped you?
Yes, I've had many. And I like that. So really shape me. Yes, of the very many, I think the one that speaks right now is the one that more was revealed a little later on. I was early on into all this. I was out in sacred land in Arizona with a group. And when we took a when we took a break from doing contact work, it was very, very, very dark, pitch black out there. And I wanted to take photos because I couldn't see. I literally couldn't see past the chairs we were sitting in. So I just started using my iPhone, but took off the flash. So, of course, you have to hold down the button quite a long time so that the lens can bring in as much light as possible. It's kind of fun. I was seeing some of the cactus and fences and things. I got a little creative, and there was a tree, and very big tree with branches. And I could see the stars through the branches, and I thought it would be a very creative picture to capture that. I also, off to my right, there was a fence, but there was just blackness until there was a mountain, and I was curious what was out there. So I started with the tree, and I began taking pictures up through the branches to capture the branches and the stars, and held down my finger for a long, 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 long time. Took it back, and I looked at the picture that came out, and I was like, oh, my first thought was my thumb must have gotten in the way. So I continued to try to take pictures, same kind of pictures, but keeping my fingers away. And then I turned to the right and took pictures out past the fence toward the mountains. And when we went to sit back and begin the contact work again, I was looking through the pictures. And here is the trunk of the tree, and going up towards the branches. Now, down on the right side of the picture are little, I guess you call them like angel globes that showed up. So these tiny little globes showed up. That was certainly nothing that the human eye could have perceived. But then covering almost the entirety of the tree, really huge, was this cylinder, sphere that was quite beautiful, creamy white, thick, and it had prismatic colors through it, blues and purples. And I worked with somebody years after, because a lot of us were like, whoa, what was that? That was not little angel globes. That was something entirely different. And I was told this is a species that was very interested in me. And this was its way of getting very close and spending time, but not necessarily coming out to have full interaction, which, by the way, is great, because I was so new at this in the beginning. So it was being very gentle with me. And then when the pictures came out of turning past the fence toward the mountain, it captured spacecraft in the sky. And this is what I mean by how fortunate I feel I've been, these very benevolent experiences. And I've had many more, some of them wild. But everything has been, there's almost this knowing, like we know you're there, or like we're going to show ourselves to the four of you in this car, but nobody else in the freeway is going to see us, which is really amazing. And many other interactions. But I love this contact work. I'm totally into contact work. And I like that they know. And I like that they feel safe enough to approach us and let us know, howdy, we see you too, and we thank you for doing the good work and opening the door for what's possible in the future.
That was a great story. Debbi Dachinger, where can we find you?
Thank you. Yeah, my YouTube channel, go to my name. It's Debbi with an I and Dachinger with a C, so it's DEBBI. Dachinger. It's also my website, debbidachinger.com. I'm speaking in Spain at a New Earth event. They're not flying me in. I'm going to do a Zoom. So I'm speaking at an event this Saturday. And I also do these healing sessions. If you'd like to experience a galactic shamanic healing, it's beautiful and powerful, especially for right now. So you can join at debbidachinger.com/healing. And if I may, I have a gift for your audience. Anybody who would like to know more about what species of starseed you are, what your galactic ancestry is, I have this beautiful 2-hour video with me and the amazing Debbi Solaris, the galactic historian, where we break down like 20 different species, and you will know who you are. And then there's also a report that goes with it, my gift to you, and that's debbidachinger.com/starseed.
Amazing. Debbi, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Pleasure. I'm so glad we did this, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really happy.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.